But Sanjay, you see what you're doing now. You really are making things a million times worse than they have to be. All of my Muslim listeners, who may well be listening at home or in their cars, really offended by the things you're saying, is that Rory Stewart has probably gone too far on this one. To say that we should just kill all of these Brits who've gone to fight with ISIS is too much. Sanjay's called to have his say. Good morning to you, Sanjay.
Good morning, Jonathan. You're
Good morning. What would you like to say?
I completely agree with Rory, because the thing is, our taxpayers' money should never have to pay for trials and treat these people as human beings once they come back from places like that. In fact, this country shouldn't be letting them in anyway, because let me tell you something, these British-born Muslims are supposed to be British. I think this country is participating towards the Islamic problems, because look at the things this country is doing. They give Muslims whatever they want. There's a limit to all this, what you're saying about human rights. And you know, when you say make mistakes, that's not really a mistake. That's more stupidity and brainwash than it is a mistake. People make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, but we learn from it. These people never learn. And
that's not true, is it? There have been people in the UK. Is it Majid Nawaz, who he himself was radicalised? And now he spends a great deal of time in the UK trying to get the message across to everyone, Muslim and non-Muslim, that kind of radicalisation is not the path to follow. So there are stories where people have gone down a certain path and have seen the error of their ways.
Well, Majid Nawaz is a good guy, but the thing is, he still can't see the difference between Islamism and Islam, because to me, Islamism is Islam. It's still the same thing. When you open the Quran, you've got over 100 verses of killing and hating non-believers, so there's absolutely no such thing as a difference between terrorism and Islam, because it's the same thing. Islam means submit.
Okay, let's not get bogged down in the whole attack on Muslims that obviously you're quite keen to do. I mean, let's just keep this to the issue at hand. Yeah. What I'm saying to you is, if you get a young man who, like Majid Nawaz, becomes radicalised, who goes over to Syria, sees the error of his ways, wants to come back to the UK, and because he's experienced that, the things that he can tell people, other young men in this country, that would put them off doing the same thing, surely that is invaluable.
Well, the thing is, Jonathan, in Britain, we can't take the risk of it, if you know what I mean. I know Majid's a good guy, and he is telling a few people, that's good, but Majid is in the minority. What I mean is, we can't, as British people, we don't want the risk of these people where they could kill anyone at any time. We can't take that risk.
Sanjay, because you appear to just hate Muslims. I mean, this is coming across.
I don't, Jonathan. Look, Muslims are human beings. I just talk facts.
Stay there one second. I want to bring Abdul in Luton in. He's called to have his say. Good morning to you, Abdul.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Sanjay's saying just kill them all because we don't want to spend any taxpayers' money rehabilitating them or punishing them in the UK. They will serve no purpose. Far better to get rid of them while they're still in Syria.
You know what's really interesting about what he says? That's the exact rhetoric that an ISIS supporter would actually say about British or American individuals in the Middle East. Get rid of them all. We shouldn't have them here. Let's kill them all. He sounds exactly... This is why I don't believe extremism and radicalization is limited to a specific demographic or a specific type of people or a community. It's a stupidity. It's the stupidity that, unfortunately, crosses boundaries across ethnic lines, religious lines, and Sanjay is typical of that. He wants to kill them all without defining who them is. And in my view, them is a specific person or people that have are legitimately assessed as a threat. Not all people who return from Syria are necessarily a threat. And I'm not stupid enough to suggest that they're all innocent.
I was going to say, what are they doing going over to Syria then, for a holiday?
Right, no, hold on a second. There are also non-Muslim British individuals who have gone over to Syria, and they've gone over to fight for the other side. Now, I'm not going to say who's better or worse. It doesn't really matter. That distinction is pointless because they have both been involved in a violent conflict which was not sanctioned by the British state, and they have been involved. Hang
on a minute, Sanjay. Sorry, Abdul. Surely you will accept that a British person who goes to fight ISIS is is a better person than a British person who goes to fight for ISIS.
I'll tell you why. Let me explain to you why it's not so great. In the past, I've read countless arguments from people like Sanjay who say that people who go over to fight for ISIS are a threat to the people here because they view the non-Muslims as being, the enemy of ISIS. Well, I would counter that anyone who also, and I agree with that, but I will also counter that anyone who goes to fight against ISIS, like Sanjay, will be a threat to all us British Muslims living here.
Hang on! No, Abdul, that's ridiculous.
No,
it is ridiculous, and I'm going to explain why it's ridiculous. We have seen, and this now goes back several years, we have seen the barbaric brutality from members of ISIS. We have seen the mass executions, the lobbing people off buildings, the getting children to shoot people in the back of the head while their hands are tied behind their backs. We have seen how dreadful ISIS are. Now, surely any Brit who does decide to try and help and to go and fight these people who are killing both Muslims and non-Muslims in the Middle East, surely that person is a far better person and doesn't necessarily pose any risk whatsoever to Muslims in the UK. They're going to kill evil ISIS members.
Well, it's not true. If that individual was a trained individual by the British state sanctioned to go, then he would be under the authority of the British state. There are people who have gone over without any actual sanctioning by the state. They've just gone over and they've come back.
I'm prepared to accept that there is an argument as to whether they should be doing that or not, but to liken a Brit who goes to fight ISIS with a Brit who goes to fight for ISIS, I think that's a nonsense.
Okay, hold on a second. Two things don't have to be entirely identical in order for it to be comparable. What I'm saying is that they are on that far end of the spectrum. They might not be exactly like for like, fair enough, I'll give you that. But they are on the spectrum where they pose a threat to other people.
No, but if they were a threat, for example, if your argument is that, hang on one second, if your argument is that a British guy who goes to Syria to try and kill members of ISIS would pose a threat to Muslims in the UK, then why did that Brit decide to go to Syria? Why didn't they just stay here and kill Muslims?
No, because they go over there, they get radicalized. When they're here, they're not in a state necessarily armed and trained and fully utilized to do what they need to do.
Abdul, come on.
It's okay for you. It's okay for you to sit there in your little, cotton wool life here when you don't feel the threat. I listen to people like Sanjay, and I feel like there are, especially vulnerable members in the Muslim community who have to walk around people like Sanjay who violently speak on the radio about Muslims being the fifth column and apparently we're not part of the British society.
Can I say something?
That language leads to violence.
Can I say something that
leads to the Islamophobia?
Sure, Sanjay, you come back in, sure.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. All my life I've spent time with Muslims, and I've had Muslim friends all my life. One thing I've realised about British Muslims is, even though they are British and they should be British, they give they're never patriotic British because they put Islam before Britain, and this is one of the main reasons. And another thing, like what Abdul's doing right now, he does something that people should know. He does taqiyya and kitman, which is the Islamic art of lying. So all the time he lies, and a lot.
Hang on a minute, Sanjay. That's really, really unfair. That's really unfair.
No Muslim ever admits to the things they do wrong. They always lie.
No, but Sanjay, you see, what you're doing now, you really are making things a million times worse than they have to be. With your kind of rhetoric, you're making things really, really bad, because what you're doing is you're sending a message to Abdul, who's called in because he's quite offended by the things you're saying. All of my Muslim listeners who may well be listening at home or in their cars, really offended by the things you're saying. You're making those people feel as if they are unwelcome, as if they're viewed with suspicion, as if they are bad people. Now, how on earth, when we live in a time where we all need to learn to rub along nicely next to one another, how on earth does that help what you're doing?
Because Muslims only have one agenda, and that's to breed, and take over this country. And in 20 years...
Do you know what, Sanjay? We're going to leave it there. Because, I mean...
Jonathan,
go on, Abdul.
Jonathan, I'm not surprised by what Sanjay's saying. Now, before anyone else misunderstood what I was saying, I'm not in any way saying that those who fight ISIS are worse. or even equal. I'm not. What I'm saying is that they're in that spectrum. When you go over to a battlefield and you go there, you start to visualize the enemy as being one and the same, just like Sanjay did. He sees all Muslims as being ISIS and all ISIS as being just Muslims, and it's all black and white for him.
What? So hang on a minute. So you really would rather we interview those people, find out whether they are radicalised nutcases, and if they are, then we kill them?
What I'm saying is that any binary view on matters such as, especially such as life and death, is not light, and we shouldn't be making light of it on radio by discussing it as though it's a easy answer, yes or no. It never is.
Okay.
And people like Sanjay make it sound like it's a binary view. If they're Muslim and fighting abroad, kill them. If they're non-Muslim and fighting abroad, bring them back. That's the message he sends, and that's not the message that we should be
but hang on one second, because I don't think, and it was very unfortunate, I think, that Sanjay started to go off on what appeared to be a bit of a mission of being rather anti-Islam and anti-Muslim. But if you have, let me give you a scenario. My barber is a Muslim. His brother is Kurdish. Well, he's Kurdish as well, but he's over here. His brother still lives over there, and his brother works for the Kurdish army. His brother is killing ISIS. His brother is a Muslim killing members of ISIS. Now, if a Brit went over to join the Kurdish forces, if a British Muslim went over and joined the Kurdish forces fighting ISIS, are they better? Are they more deserving of staying alive and having a future in this country afterwards than a Brit who leaves this country and goes to fight for ISIS?
Whether they're better
the answer
or
is
not,
yes. You know the answer is yes. Come on.
It may well be, but you're alluding to the fact that being better than ISIS is somehow a noble standard.
Because anybody that fights ISIS is doing good. Anybody that fights for ISIS is doing bad. Come on, you surely can say that, Abdul.
Yes, but the whole reason, well, we're not here to say whether or not someone who fights for ISIS or doesn't fight for ISIS.
But it's obvious. It's very obvious. If you're going to fight for ISIS, you are a bad person. If you're going to fight...
Okay, Jonathan, let me ask you a question. A person goes to fight against ISIS. He is now deemed to be a mentally unstable, considered to be a threat by the British authorities. Let's say MI5 have looked at them and realized that this guy spouts views such as Sanjay. He fought ISIS. Should he be allowed back into Britain to live among British Muslims?
Abdul, thank you very much indeed for your call.